guys, so I'm back with my completed travel journal from my trip to France in June. So today I'm going to show you how I go about, I'm going to flip through it and tell you a bit about how I make my journals and how I've made them in the past and what happens with all the memorabilia. And then I'm going to start, hopefully, my Portugal trip one from August, and that one I'll do a much more in detail depth of the process of making it, since I haven't even started it yet. So yes, so the first time I went on a real trip, well, I mean, I've been to the States a lot of times, which is real in itself, but for me it's visiting family. It's not so much as a touristy kind of trip where I want to document every single detail. It's more of like everyday life kind of thing, just my grandparents and such, so I don't make travel journals for that. So the first time I went to a real trip with my family, whatever, was when I went with my dad and my mom to Paris in 2016, and that's when I first started making journals. So this first one I never got around to finishing, sadly, but I did get very close. Actually, this wasn't the first trip. The first trip, anyway, so this is the second trip I went to, and this is the one I started really making journals on. The first one was when we went to Rome in the same year, and I started writing things on random pieces of paper, and I wrote it down for like the first 2 days, and then I didn't, and then I stopped writing, and I didn't even continue. I didn't even keep the things I wrote down, and that is something I regret not doing, because there was a lot of cool stories I will probably never remember again from Rome. So when I went to Paris, I decided I would take a journal with me so I would have an excuse to write. So here I wanted to keep it simple, and at the time I had gotten this new watercolor set. So basically I did sort of like a title page for every day, and then I had a very detailed itinerary of what we did, and then I journaled for each hour. And then any memorabilia I added in here was what is it called, receipts. And I never actually got around to making a Paris album with pictures and such, so I only have this and the memorabilia, and I don't really have any pictures printed and whatnot. And at this point I probably will never get around to doing a Paris album. I might make a couple layouts just to have them, but I don't know when that will be. So basically this is all I have right now from the Paris trip and the memorabilia that I was planning to use in the album but never got around to. Anyway, so that's what happened the first time around. Then last year, again in April, when I went with school to Greece for a week, I started a journal, and again I never finished it because it was a very, very tiring trip. We were in buses all day, from like 8 in the morning till 10 at night, and then we were just all exhausted all the time. Barely slept and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't really inspired to write while I was on the trip. And then when I got back, I had exams. It was a very busy part of the school year, so I never got around to documenting that either in a journal, and that I think is another one that I will probably regret. But I did do a better job of scrapbooking pictures, even though my phone died and I lost all my pictures. But thankfully I had sent them on Messenger to my friends, so I just saved them. Well, most of them, not all of them. So anyway, when I went to France this year, I decided that I was going to do my best to write everything down, because I knew one day I'm gonna cherish this. Even now I do. I mean, it's just 2 months and I still cherish this. So when I take a travel journal, my goal is to write everything down that happened in the day while I'm there during the trip. So the end of the day comes along and I start writing, or even on train rides or planes and that kind of stuff, like are long and you have space to write and whatnot. But again, I didn't end up writing while I was there. Yeah, because again, it was a very tiring trip as well. It was okay, but I mean, it was very nice, but we were taking a lot of very early trains to get to different cities, so we would have to wake up at 5 in the morning every day, and like by the time we went to bed, since it got dark really late, it was like after 12, so it was again barely any sleep, and I didn't get around to doing it. And then I did write the first couple days when I got home, right after I got home, and then I stopped because frankly, it's kind of boring. It's not the most enjoyable process for me to sit down and write all this stuff. So I had to force myself to do it, which is another reason why I should do it on the trip, because I'm much more inspired then. But anyway, so yeah, so the process is I would have written down things and glued down memorabilia. So yes, and then when I would get home, I would supposedly decorate the journal. But what happened is I did that same process, but I did everything at home. So I sat down in, I don't know, 30-minute time intervals and just started writing and gluing memorabilia. Now, about how memorabilia works, I'll go into much greater detail when I start making the Portugal album. About that video, truth be told, probably not be here until next year because school starts tomorrow and I haven't started that at all whatsoever. So, here's what I have left of memorabilia. So when I go to a museum or something, I literally get 10 of the same brochure or business cards or whatever. I get as many as possible without looking weird, and if my sister's there with me, I make her get some and I get some. It's just a whole process. So basically what I do is I separate, since I have it all now, as I didn't do it day by day, I separate all the memorabilia into days. And then I go through it and I decide which pieces I know I want to make sure I get on a scrapbook layout, which pieces I know it will never make it on a scrapbook layout, and then ones that I have quadruples and pentuples of, or whatever the English word is for 5 times something. I put some aside to keep later for scrapbooking pages, and then I put some aside to maybe add to the journal. So this pile here consists of leftovers from what didn't make it into the journal, mostly because of space, or maybe I didn't find it absolutely necessary to be in there. And then things that I want to include in scrapbooking layouts, like these tickets, maybe some of these cards. I had multiple of these. They're in the journal, which you'll see shortly. So here's basically what I have left, and I get postcards from practically everywhere. They're the one thing I get, so I have like 50 billion postcards that will eventually go into some sort of mini album, but not anytime soon. So these go in my memorabilia closet and the shelf in my scrapbooking closet, I mean. So yes, so this is what's left over, and once I'm done with all the layouts involving this France trip that I want to make, I will go through this small pile. It's actually quite small. The Portuguese one is going to be much, much bigger. I can guarantee you that. I'm going to go through again and throw things out or put them all in a little box to keep, depending on what I feel at that point in time. So these will remain in this folder that has some pictures printed and some plans for the album and such. So yes, so the Portuguese folder at this point doesn't even close. So that's going to be quite a larger process. And I'm going to take you through, I'm going to do a very guided process of how I make the journal with the Portuguese one. So for this one, so in my journals, I try not to use good product, and by that I mean stuff that I still absolutely love and still see me using and wanting to use and feeling inspired to use on scrapbook pages. So I'm not gonna pull out a full like Amy Tangerine collection or something like that. Now what I did do for this particular case is I did pull out the August stash kit that I have that I'm still using, and I'm going to be using till the end of September at least, and pulled a few papers from some of the 6x6 paper pads and 6x paper pads and the 6x12. But they're papers I have duplicates of and feel comfortable using in your journal. And then I didn't use any embellishments, any of my good embellishments. Basically, I have these sticker books from IKEA. I'll just go grab them very quick. So yes, I have these sticker books from IKEA, most of which I actually bought right before or right after I came back because I thought they would be nice to use. Basically, they just have nice little designs and like labels and things, most of which I probably won't use on a scrapbook page. I mean, I will use these circular ones and some arrows, but this stuff I probably won't use. Like this kind of thing. This one I've had from quite some time. The others are newer. So I mainly used this washi tape and my small bin of scraps, which my small bin of scraps is this one right here, which I think I've talked about in scrap room tours, but basically I don't consider something a scrap unless I'm done, absolutely done working with a paper pad or paper collection. And then anything that's small that can fit in here goes in here. Anything else goes in my loose paper section. So I basically was going through this and just finding little bits and pieces to fill in blank spaces in the journal. So I'm using supplies that I would probably never use on actual scrapbook pages, which is awesome. The few things I did use that I consider good scrapbooking supplies is this paper is actually from the Posh collection and I'm far done from working, but it had this perfect notebook label thing that I wasn't going to use on a scrapbook page, so here it is, and I really like how this looks. So this paper is from the Posh collection. I've added, I also used the alphabet from the Posh collection because I wanted something flat and not chipboard that wouldn't unglue itself, and especially for the insides I also wanted something flat just because it's already really bulky with all those brochures being stuck into it. So yes, and then these are some basic gray, really old tiny alphas. I think they're from the Prism collection. So the journal starts with like an on the way, so this is the first day of traveling, basically getting there. So we stayed, and then for this particular trip, just because we went to a lot of different cities, I think there's 4 in total, I just did a title page for each city. So I have Paris here, which we basically were there for just an afternoon, just because me and my dad have both been there and there wasn't really any reason to stay there, especially since we had to get to the conference the next day. So here you see I have things like, I have written down what we did, like to a very fine detail as much as I can remember, because I finished this journal 2 months after we came back from the trip. So ideally all the writing would have been done at max a week after we came back, but that's just wasn't realistic. The Portuguese one will probably be much more delayed. So yes, so the key to journaling I find is writing it as soon as possible, just to make sure I don't forget any details. But those details can be triggered from pictures and memorabilia in a specific time frame. But anyway, I don't know if I'm rambling or if I'm making sense. I haven't made a video in quite some time, so I'm sorry if this is confusing. So here, this is pretty simple. I just use a 6x8 paper. Well, I trimmed it down a bit. It's a slap of washi tape and the name of the city, again using these flat. These are from Simple Stories. I think this is from the Let's Party collection, and I used those same stickers for all the cities. You'll see. So then I have like the hotel business card there. This is just journaling. So you see here I had a small little empty area, and I just put some pattern paper to make interesting. And then what I also did a lot was I have a bunch of different pens that I use to outline the different pages, especially the ones that were just had a lot of writing on them, like these. And then I also use that same pen to maybe scribble in some hearts or stars just to add a bit of decoration. It's very minimalistic, and I don't really mind if it's wonky or not, because it's supposed to be a travel journal, and I don't need it to be super symmetrical and stuff like that. So see, Paris was pretty short. It was just 2 pages. Then we have Angers, that's where we stayed for the longest time. We're there 3 full days and a bit more. So this one does have a lot of more journaling or more memorabilia. So for this one, I have, this is the first day. So this is the title page of the city, and then the first day comes. So see here, I used a receipt, and here's just another random piece of paper from the scrap bin. This one too. And then here's another receipt, and I did some scribbling and stuff like that. So the pens I use mostly, I use these, they're from Tiger, and I'm pretty sure they're alcohol markers. And they're the ones that are bleeding through some of these pages. That's okay. It's not so bad. You can't really see it everywhere. And then for the different days in each city, so for example here, I just did a small little place to mark that it's day 2, and then day 3, and so on, because I was really running out of space. I almost thought I wasn't going to have enough space, but it worked out literally just perfectly. So here's day 2. Let's use the cute little whatever. This one. This story here was just to fill in the gap between gluing this down and what followed next. So here's like why I have the selfie story down here, and the scrap piece of paper. These stickers are from those sticker books I showed you, and so on. Something else I'd like to mention was that when I do these journals, I try to keep the color scheme to something that expresses the place I was in. So like this cool, like cutesy kind of floral blue, pink and yellows and blues, and this minty color and like the peaches. I really felt that it represented where I was staying, especially like this paper is super that town. And yeah, so it does have a bit more bold colors as well, just because those are the markers I have, but you can see a lot of the mints and the light blues and so on. Anyway, so then here, this thing, I wanted to make sure it opened, so I glued it on this side of the journal so that it can open over here like this. Then of course it can open over on the other side. And then this is just a scrap piece of paper. Then here I have a ticket. So I had 2 of these actually I had 3. So I just glued one in here, and then the others I'll use in my journal, in my scrapbooking layouts. And then I had this little piece of a receipt that I liked this logo here, so I just stuck that there. And then I came back in and like added some stickers and a scribble and that kind of thing. Here's another brochure. So this is the front of it, and then this is the back. I had 2 of these, and I wasn't going to use this in the layout. So I glued this one down, and then I cut the half of it and glued this. And I left a little spot here, mostly to separate the fact that this museum ended and another one came. Here's another brochure, again, just filled in the empty spot with a scrap. Actually, this wasn't a scrap piece of paper. This was one of the papers in my kit. And then I add these tabs just to have some sort of interactive element. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward that this opens, but I like how those just look there. So I have this thing here. It's actually quite thick, so that's why I'm trying to keep all the embellishing to a bit as flat as possible. There's nothing dimensional in here other than this stuff. And then here, for example, this was a restaurant we went to twice, so sometimes I get creative, and I didn't find a business card, and for some reason I didn't keep the receipt. So I actually got a napkin. I saved a bunch of napkins that were clean, and I stuck one here. So there's that. Now, for example, since I was by myself on this particular day of sightseeing, because my dad was at the conference, I only had 1 ticket from the Natural History Museum, but this is probably a ticket, considering the picture that I'm going to be scrapbooking from there. This one didn't really match with the feel of the layout and that, so I just decided to glue it in here. This one I don't have any pictures for, and I have 2 or 3, so I just glued one in there. I still have 2 spare, but I could just throw them out now, but I'm just gonna keep them just to make sure until the very end of the album. And then here I have another ticket that I was by myself, but again, it has like the Facebook here and like this weird stuff that I really like on a layout. So it's in here, and then I have some little embellishment cluster, and then I have this brochure again. and some scribbles instead of paper this time. So here I have both the business card and the receipt, and I have another squiggle arrow thingy and some embellishing and whatnot. And then here is the day 3. So this actually was the remnants, the B-side of the remnants of this. So I used up a full 6x12 piece, so that was good. Now this one really bled through, and that might bug people a lot, and does bug me a little bit, and bled through over here even, but it's okay. It's not that bad. Here's another little very simple embellishment cluster. So here's this as well. So sometimes while I was writing this stuff, if I had an idea of how I wanted to decorate, I would just do something with a pencil. So in this instance, I wanted to point to the flyer with this huge arrow. So I had drawn it very loosely with a pencil, and I just redid it with a pen. Oh, so this metallic pen, I have a blue one, a red one, a gold, and a silver one. Are these ones here, and I think they're from Lidl. I mean, they're just a metallic pen. They're made in Germany. So yeah, here's another piece of scrap paper. So we went here twice. There's what the heck. I just stuck that there as well as a little bit of embellishing. And then here's a new city. So we have a full page with the new city and a bit of squiggling. So again, these 2 tickets, I had 2 tickets, and normally I would have just glued down one and kept one for a layout. But again, these both are, the colors here are a bit vintagey, and I would probably have a hard time using them in a scrapbook layout, so I just stuck them in here, and I can still look at them and the prettiness of them, because I do love them. And then I have this brochure stuck in here. So some of these brochures are actually quite thick, so I also tried to make sure that I had balanced out the weight of them. So I have stuff glued on both sides of the journal, just so that hopefully it won't split in two. Here's more journaling. Here's another map thing. And this is actually, see, another creative thing. This is a chocolate wrapper that I washed down with a wet wipe and then just stuck it in here. And it's very, I really like adding those little weird things. So a journal is also a place where you can add this weird memorabilia stuff that you'll have trouble adding to a scrapbook page, or you wouldn't necessarily want to keep. Again, these 2 tickets are from the art museum, and if I scrapbook the art museum, it will be pictures of art, and then these would just distract too much on that layout, so I stuck them both in here. And then here is a brochure. Again, I have extras of all of these brochures because I like to cut them up as well and maybe use like the map here somehow as an element on a layout and whatnot. I'm planning to do a series of using memorabilia on layout, so if you're interested, stay tuned. I don't know when it will be uploaded though. So, and here's the last city, went to La Rochelle, and we didn't really do a lot of sightseeing here, so thankfully it only took up this much because my journal was running out. So there's again the title page, and then I crammed everything onto this one page. So I have 3 business cards from the 3 restaurants we had food at, and then just a little blurb about the travel the way back. So again, I have this on the go situation, and then the end at the bottom, and that completes this journal. Now I think ideally I would have some sort of band to keep it closed or some clip, but I don't know where to find that, and I don't have one, so it's just gonna stay like this for the moment. I mean, it's not so bad. It doesn't open, well, like that it does, but if I set it down, it doesn't really open all that much. Maybe it's because of the weight of the glued stuff in it. So this is my France journal that I made. So I hope you guys enjoy the process and are inspired to do something similar. I will have again a very scrutinizing step-by-step video of how I make the journals for my Portuguese, for the one for Portugal. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.